Hey, third graders, welcome back. Hope you are rested and ready to go for our last 9 weeks of school. We're going to start a new writing unit today, and it's overall called a fiction narrative, but we're going to get a little bit more specific about that, and I'm going to show you what we're going to do in just a second. I'm going to read you a book and read you actually a couple books this week so you can get some good examples of what we're going to be doing. But this particular unit for us is about realistic fiction. So we're going to start to learn how to write realistic fiction and kind of understand what writers do to those fictional pieces that accurately portray or show realistic events. So what you're going to be doing today is I'm going to show you how to read a story with a writer's eye. And I want you to be asking yourself, what do you notice? You might already know this story, so you know what's going to happen. Maybe you don't. But I want you to notice kind of what's really happening in the story. I want you to be paying close attention at realistic fiction and thinking of what does that mean to you, all right? We're going to read the story called Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. You've probably heard that one before. And then tomorrow, we're going to read a different story, and you're going to notice some things again. And the reason we're doing that is we want to have some good examples of what realistic fiction is, all right? So you're going to need your writer's notebook because we are starting a brand new unit, and you're going to start today by taking some notes before I start to read the story. All right, so fiction, you know, is pretend or made up, and a narrative is just a story. But for third grade, our goal, right, is to write realistic fiction. So what does that mean? And you're going to copy this down into your writer's notebook, right? I've got the title Realistic Fiction, and what that is a fictional or made up story that could happen in real life. So I want you to be paying attention today as I read this story. What kinds of things do you notice that are realistic in this story? All right, we want to look at our learning targets. We added an extra one today because one of the targets for third grade is I can produce different types of writing. So you've already done a personal narrative, you've done an opinion letter, you've done an explanatory presentation, you've done an informational presentation, and now you're adding to that by writing a fifth type of writing, which is called realistic fiction. So you can produce or make different types of writing already. Here's what we're going to focus on. I can write a realistic fiction story. Okay, we're going to talk about specifically what that includes in our list tomorrow. All right, so if you need to pause the video to write this down, you're going to send a picture of this in to your teacher so that we know you're keeping up with what our lessons are. Okay, and now I'm going to start, and I'm going to read this story to you. Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. Right, this is a really old story. You can tell that my book is quite old. We're going to kind of think about how writers write realistic fiction, right? What do they do? What do you notice? And like I said, tomorrow we're going to read another realistic fiction story. So remember, realistic fiction is made up. They're pretend stories, but these things could happen in real life. All right. So let me zoom out a little bit so we can see all the pages. Okay. So I always like to look at the title page there. Gives the artist or the author's name and the illustrator's name. But this book was written in 1975. There's Alexander. Let's see what happens to him if you've never read this story before. Remember, you're looking at it from a writer's eye. Okay, let me get rid of some of that sunshine today. Not that I'm complaining. That does get in the way sometimes of what we can see on the screen. Okay, so here's the dedication page. Here is Alexander. I went to sleep with gum in my mouth, and now there's gum in my hair. And when I got out of bed this morning, I tripped on the skateboard. And by mistake, I dropped my sweater in the sink while the water was running. And I could tell it was going to be a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. Okay, so use that writer's eye right now. Think about, what do you notice? Maybe the illustrations are helpful. All right, looks like he's in his bedroom. That's someplace that's familiar to us. He's having a rough start to his day, right? Some of those things might have happened to us in the past. At breakfast, Anthony found a Corvette Stingray car kit in his breakfast cereal box, and Nick found a junior undercover agent code ring in his breakfast cereal box. But my breakfast cereal box, all I found was breakfast cereal. So they got a prize. Alexander did not, right? Eating morning breakfast at the table with some siblings. I think I'll move to Australia. In the carpool, Mrs. Gibson let Becky have a seat by the window. Audrey and Elliot got seats by the window too. I said I was being scrunched. I said I was being smushed. I said, if I don't get a seat by the window, I am going to be car sick. No one even answered. I could tell it was going to be a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. I think a lot of these things could happen in real life, right? Driving to school in the carpool, right, with other kids. At school, Mrs. Dickens liked Paul's picture of the sailboat better than my picture of the invisible castle. So there's a sailboat. He drew an invisible castle. At singing time, she said, I sang too loud. At counting time, she said, I left out 16. Who needs 16? I could tell it was going to be a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. Do you notice things in your classroom that might look like that? I could tell because Paul said I wasn't his best friend anymore. He said that Philip Parker was his best friend and that Albert Moyo was his next best friend and that I was only his third best friend. Friends argue in real life, don't they? I hope you sit on a tack, I said to Paul. I hope the next time you get a double-decker strawberry ice cream cone, the ice cream part falls off the cone part and lands in Australia. So he's kind of trying to defend himself by saying rude and mean things. People do that in real life. There were 2 cupcakes in Philip Parker's lunch bag, and Albert got a Hershey bar with almonds, and Paul's mother gave him a piece of jelly roll that had little coconut sprinkles on the top. Guess whose mother forgot to put in dessert? It was a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. That's what it was, because after school, my mom took us all to the dentist. And Dr. Fields found a cavity just in me. Come back next week and I'll fix it, said Dr. Fields. Next week, I said, I'm going to Australia. How many of you have gone to the dentist after school? Or maybe had to leave school early to go to the dentist? On the way downstairs, the elevator door closed on my foot, and while we were waiting for my mom to go get the car, Anthony made me fall where it was muddy. And then when I started crying because of the mud, Nick said I was a crybaby. And while I was punching Nick for saying crybaby, my mom came back with the car and scolded me for being muddy and fighting. How many of you have gotten in trouble for doing something like that with a sibling or a cousin? I am having a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. I told everybody. No one even answered. He's kind of feeling like Brian, isn't he? Kind of feeling a little bit invisible, like no one's paying any attention to him. So then we went to the shoe store to buy some sneakers. Anthony chose white ones with blue stripes. Nick chose red ones with white stripes. I chose blue ones with red stripes. But then the shoe man said, "We're all sold out." They made me buy plain old white ones, but they can't make me wear them. Let's see, his brothers look pretty happy. They got smiles on their faces. Alexander does not look very thrilled. Have you ever gone someplace to get something and they didn't have what you wanted? You know how he feels. When we picked up my dad at his office, he said I couldn't play with his copy machine, but I forgot. He also said to watch out for the books on his desk, and I was careful as I could be, except for my elbow. He also said don't fool around with his phone, but I think I called Australia. My dad said please don't pick him up anymore. It was a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. There were lima beans for dinner, and I hate limas. There was kissing on TV, and I hate kissing. Ugh. My bath was too hot. I got soap in my eyes. My marble went down the drain, and I had to wear my railroad train pajamas. I hate my railroad train pajamas. Have you ever had to wear something you didn't want to wear? Maybe the laundry's not done. That's all you have to wear. When I went to bed, Nick took back the pillow he said I could keep, and the Mickey Mouse nightlight burned out, and I bit my tongue. The cat wants to sleep with Anthony, not with me. It has been a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. My mom says some days like that. Looks like he's got a messy room. So pick up his things. I wonder if your room might look like that. There are his brothers. Looks to me like they share a room. Maybe some of you share a room. Maybe you have some of the same toys. Even in Australia. Right? Everybody has a bad day. So if he goes to Australia, he might have a bad day there too. Right? So your job today was to look at the story, right? Noticing how the author wrote things that could really happen in real life, right? Very familiar setting. He was at school, he was at the dentist, at his dad's office, back in his bedroom, right? At the dinner table or the breakfast table. Lots of familiar things. Sometimes these things might happen to us, right? I noticed that there's a beginning of the story, a middle of this story, an ending to this story, right? So as writers, we want to be looking at other examples of realistic fiction so that we can kind of model the same things, right? So remember, you needed to write this down in your writer's notebook. You're going to send a picture of this page to your teacher. That's proof that you watched this lesson and that you were listening and watched the story. And then tomorrow, we're going to view another example of realistic fiction, and we're going to write a little bit more in our writer's notebook, so be prepared for that. All right, have a great day.